Okay, so I just want to show you this product here called Crackle Paste. This is another acrylic medium that I like to use. You can see here they have the little graph on the back, transparent, opaque, matte gloss. So it's fairly thick and it's very matte and it's not transparent. But it's designed to create a crackle effect. Now the problem is with this is it's not just a magic formula, right? Like no art material is. You have to achieve effects through the skill of the use or practice thereof. And I find this to be unpredictable. Like for example, if you put it on fairly thin on a really smooth surface like this, sorry for the lighting, but I have to turn the light down because you won't be able to see the effect. If it's whited out, like it'll be lost. So that's why the video is a little bit darker. So if you put this on a really smooth finish, like polished finish, it'll tend to peel off and create a different look than what you would assume to be crackle. But if you put this on a sanded surface and a little bit heavier, it'll crack. Like a mosaic of cracks. So you have to play around with it, right? And that's the nature of the game. And those that achieve certain looks and effects are those that practice the art. So I'll just show you here for an example. Like you can see a little bit of it here that I've been working off. And then you can see that some of it's on here. Okay, and I'll show you. So I'll just take this plastic and I'll knock some of it off. It's almost like a type of chipping, but it's more of an external sort of plaster chip. So that door's been masked off, but you can see that it creates a layer. In this case, I want old paint, years, like decades of paint and plaster effect. I also have some tape on there, so that's going to reveal the brick. Okay. Now I'll show you on this part right here. You can see the flaking. See here. So this is going to be relative to the scale that you model in. This is 187, so this is more of a peeling plaster. You know, where the buildings were covered over, or lots of layers of paint. A lot of brick buildings were plastered over during the 30s and 40s, etc. So yeah, so it's just another type of medium, right, that you can apply to your buildings. Now, this particular section is going to be really weathered and decayed, so I'm probably going to even use some liquid mask on this, some rubber liquid mask, where I'll apply this and then I'll basically, when I put some paint on, I'll rub it off and it'll show colors underneath. So I'll put some darker colors under here, just play around. And then you can even use chipping fluid as well, right? The same application as a military modeler. I had a long history in military modeling before the digital media culture, so I didn't photograph a lot of this stuff. Well, I did, but it's all silver particle negative records from the past. So that's where I learned a lot of this, like initially, but I was always doing model railroad stuff as a parallel path. But the military modeling really is a good thing to study, but you don't have to be a military modeler to do this kind of thing. Model railroading is another subculture of weathering, but just on a different scale and footprint, etc. But all the things that you see being used out there, it all crosses over to get that kind of weathered effect, okay? Okay, so I want to talk about a small part of this model or facade, but a very important one, and that's windows. Now, when it comes to windows like these modern ones, you're not going to be able to find these. However, this is a good argument for those that are already in the 3D printer curve. Like, there's no way I'm going to buy a 3D printer just to make windows, but because I build one-offs and I just like to scratch immediately, like on the fly. I don't want to wait for something or order something. I want it on hand, and because that works for efficiency and economy of time, right? Like, that's why I scratch as much as I can, or will attempt to scratch just about anything in the immediate sense and get it done. This is not the funnest part of the build, but it's essential. So this has basically been framed out. Like, doing the outer frame and the window opening is not that hard because you got something to push against, but you got to mark with a very sharp pencil and then nibble and cut. And it's a bit tedious, but when it's done after a few hours, they look really good. Now the center bar, here's a little tip that I want to show you. So when I get the perimeter of the window framed in, what I do is I lay in 10 by 30. Okay, so I have these two. So I use the window frame. I use 131 30 by 30. And then for trim, this centerpiece I'll show you is 10 by 30, which is the same width as the post, right? So what I do is I mark the center of the window and I just lay in a piece of 10 by 30, number 101 strip. See how it's loose there? Just tack this end, tack, 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 and then I come back and I put a little bead of glue there, and I make sure, like, I've marked, but just, you know, eyeball as well, just to center this window post. Now I'll just move to this other one here and I'll show you. So then I take the 30 by 30 window post like this, and I can basically just put a dab of glue and just lay it. Well, here, I'll do it. Okay, so I'll put a dab of glue there just to tack it in place first, and then I just lay it on that strip. Okay, and then I come in here like this, and I just capillary in a little bit of cement along the side of it. Just give it a little touch, press, and the post is good. All right, so there's the window. And this is going to be really strong because you're going to rub up against this. If you try to fit that post without a backing plate like that, with this 10 by 30 thou to support it, you're going to knock it out. Or even when you cut this too short, like, how are you going to join the bottom and the top? Because it's going to happen, because there's no tolerance. It's almost zero tolerance when you're framing in windows. So you can't notice this, but this center bar was actually a little bit too small. But with the backing and when the glue goes in, it kind of melts the plastic and you get a nice clean window. Even if the center post is not tight on the top and bottom of the windowsill, okay? And then once this is built up as a separate module, it will connect to this other Slum Landlord building, right? So it's almost 2 feet long, this model. And it's going to be really cool for a back layer behind the cinder block building. Okay? Okay, so I was going to skip this, but I think I should show it. because I think it's important. So remember how, so we're dealing with a flat, right, built on evergreen. This is 60 thou. See the warp there? See the deflection from all this, you know, a little bit of shrinkage, right? And the glue, mostly on this side for all the detail, tends to pull the flat in like that. But this evergreen's very soft, so you can bend it back. And I squared up this wall with this return plate, okay? This is the backdrop where my hand is, so that's the only depth that I really want here. I actually made it a little more shallow. It was originally 2 inches. So every inch counts, every ½ inch counts on a shelf layout. So you want to ask yourself the question, does this building need more depth? Like what is the most important factor here? It's the visual fascia here and story that's more important, with a little bit of, you know, angles and returns to create some, you know, depth, right? So it doesn't just look like a flat tacked onto the wall. So now this, now when you build like this, just quickly now, remember how I built larger buildings on 3/8 plywood, or you can get away with 1/4 inch, but if you use 1/4 inch, you got to probably frame it a bit so it doesn't deflect and warp as well, right? I find 3/8 though, like this is 3/8, 7 ply, Baltic birch, the stuff's like concrete, man, bulletproof. If you keep it indoors, like climate control, standing up with a weight against it, like in large sheets, I mean, because it will tend to warp a bit. But when you cut it and frame it, you can straighten it out too. But the 3/8 is really good if it's good quality and it's been kept, stored properly. So I'm not building a wooden structure, but you can see why, right? That's why I do this, to stop this, because this can happen later. So how do I fix this without using plywood? Okay, well, you have to frame it. You got to frame the plastic. So I'm going to use a wall section here, right, that's square, to glue this and then pull it in to that seam so it's straight. But I'm not just going to use one return on the side here. It won't be rigid enough. So I have to box this in. I have to frame in. So if you're not going to use wood, you got to frame it with plastic. So I'm going to glue this bottom plate in like this. Okay. Sorry for that parchment paper rattle. So I'm going to frame that, and I'm going to glue that in, weld it in place. So that'll square the bottom. And this is square, it'll square this, and then I'll cut another piece like this and start gluing it from the bottom and pull this in so it's nice and vertical and square. And then I'll have a nice, you know, 3/4 building flat, I call them, right? Okay? So that's all it looks like. Like, this is the movie thing principle I talked about, how, you know, when I built theater, stage, and movie sets, like that's what it looks like at the back. It doesn't look like anything. All right, you can see how the window frames are reinforced with strip here. So I can whack them and hit them, and they're very small, but they're strong. If you just try to stick them in place, they'll probably get knocked out. But anyway, so that's, you know, the method to my madness there. And then this part here gets squared up, because you can see I put a brace here, a strip, a heavy strip. You know, I try to think it through a bit because I don't want to waste plastic if I don't, like, I don't want to use it where I don't need to. So this will glue in really nice and make a nice, strong, rigid corner, because it's a taller building, right? Okay, show it to you from the back and closing quick. You can see the loading bays, just a facade, right? Scenic. In the window, I'll deal with something in behind the windows. And then this will go in here like this. I'll just weld that into that corner like that. And then it's nice and strong, okay? Okay, just a quick update on the build here. So you can see that, so I built this bottom structure separately with this plate on top, and now I'm just gluing on these flats. But I made sure I did all the window work first rather than trying to do it when it's built up, right? So you can see that this one I glued on first. It's got a solid piece of square stock like this in here, which gets glued to this rail. Now you can see that I just used a sheet, not this one, but this, see this rectangle? I used that to square this up on this plate to get it square, and it left about 1/2 inch of a return to glue this siding to, which won't have any windows because the actual prototype comes out like this, but I'm squeezing it in. Always trying to purchase space on a layout of any size. In this case, it's a shelf layout, but I don't want to close the alleyway out. I want room behind the cinder block building in the alleyway for a truck, a bus, or a car, or whatever. So I reduced it by a few inches where there were 2 windows, but no 2 windows on the first half. So I'm just deleting the windows. There's already 30 windows on this whole structure. Well, 29 actually. So the next piece I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this. And it's going to mount on here like that. I'm just going to glue this corner first though. And then I'm going to glue this so that's nice and square and just chase it along. Okay. And then I'll put in a couple of braces on the inside, maybe a floor, just to make sure that it holds it square. That's the thing, when you're building up like this, things can run out and deflect on you if you're not careful. But since I didn't glue anything on the face, it won't warp the plastic. Like the other building, I had to pack out quite a bit at the back to straighten it because it kind of warped like this. So in order to straighten it, you got to start framing pieces in. That's all if you don't build on a sub-plywood box like I normally do, but you can't do that here. Like I'm not going to use plywood down here, and I'm not going to use plywood up here because I want to see through the windows. And if I used plywood up here, I'd have to cut holes in all the plywood. It'd be so much extra work, right? But since these are already framed up nice with some solid stock, they're nice and straight. Okay, so it's coming together. Okay, so I just want to show you how I'm going to build this staircase. So these are little cuts. I just basically take a straight edge like this. I take number 292 angle, right? And I just cut them. I just mark a mark on a piece of wood, and I just cut a whole bunch wider than the 3 feet of this sheet. This is 10 thou sheet. A 10 thou sheet at about 11 millimeters wide, which is 3 feet in HO scale, okay? Just one long strip, 10 thou plastic, and then I cut these a little bit oversized, like this, and then I have some register marks all the way down so I know that I don't run out. And I just put a bead of glue here. I just drop in the step, just like that. Grab one, grab my glue, put a bead, drop it in. So you can see here I'm just cleaning up the staircase now. I just turn the strip upside down. Okay. There you can see I have a long flight to work with now. And this is all flexible. It doesn't matter because when I glue the channel or strip along the side, you can just straighten it. So now I'm set up for this. So here is the landings for the fire escape. Well, not really, well, it's sort of a fire escape, but it's kind of going to be a in-betweenish kind of a building that, well, it is a fire escape in theory, but it wasn't technically built as one. This is built as access to the parkade and then down to the street level. I want this kind of a stairwell down by the wall. It just will add more character and kind of draw the eye up into the back of the building. So that's why I'm doing this. And then you can see I just made the 2 landings on a piece of 15 thou. Okay, this is, I better mark that so I know what my scrap is when I'm grabbing it. 15 thou. So I just built with some H column. And what did I use? Oh, channel. I used number 262 channel. And I just framed it right onto the sheet. It's easier to build a frame that way if you're going to sheet it. So why sheet it later when you can do it now? And then what I'm going to do is, now that that's dry and cured, I'm just going to scribe a line gently, like so. And I'll just clean that up a bit. So that's going to be the first landing right here. Okay, so you can see I got the landing on here, and I'm using the same product here, number 262 channel, for the side rails on the stairs. Okay, so I just flatten them out. Like if your stairs warp a little bit, just give them a little, just crack them a bit. Right. Just push them back a bit. So you get them roughly straight. And then when you lay them on this piece of parchment paper, take a piece of this channel and then hold it down and just wick in a little bit of cement. Just do about 1 inch. Push it down flat, push against it like that. It'll grab pretty fast. And before you know it, you'll have a nice straight staircase. Okay, so you can see that I've been working on these stair runs, and you'll notice here a couple of things. So this landing is about 2/3 of the way down. Why is that? Because I think it looks better. I don't like even spreads on everything. I like, you know, change ups everywhere, especially in a small space. Like in a large space, it's different, but when you have a smaller, you want to maximize your modeling footprint on a scene. You want to change things up because there's not a lot of vastness to sort of diffuse, you know, the focus of your look. Like you just want to, like even this adds a bit of character. It's subtle, but it says something. So you can see I made this brace up. Now this brace right here is 2 poles. So this was added on because there's a parkade up here. This is a much older building, obviously. There wouldn't have been any of this steel work back then. But so instead of putting poles here, I decided to use right angle. Just to give it a more aged kind of look. So I don't want it to look ultra modern. And steel pipes for risers, I think, is fairly modern construction. So that'll go underneath. Like that. Okay. Okay, how's everybody doing? So let's get the staircase done here. This project, you know, there's a point in a project that I find, I don't know how you are, but it's always the last 5% that's the most difficult for me. It's easy for me to start a project it's easy for me to follow through with it, but it's that last 5% that you gotta, oh, I forgot this, oh, I forgot that, oh, I gotta do this, and you're just, oh, like psychologically you feel like it's done, but technically it's not, you know, so. So just a couple things. So this is gonna go like this. I'll talk to you about the posts and the railings in a second. I'm not making them out of brass this time, I'm just making them out of plastic. I'm too lazy to get my soldering iron out. And this is too delicate anyway for applying heat and everything. So, and you can see this little upright brace I made. This will slide in under here like this. I'll trim that up a little bit. That'll get mounted like that. Couple of Grant Line or Tyke, these are Grant Line nut and bolt castings just to go into the concrete. Remember now, every contractor's different. There's no one standard to staircases. So that is good. That all lines up good. I'm quite happy with the shape, the size, the length, the composition of the way it turns. I really love that part. Now I cut these posts at 5 feet. Okay, with my HO scale rule, I just cut a whole bunch at 5 feet. See that? Now railings aren't 5 feet high, so they're 3 to 4, or 3.5, somewhere around there. So I cut all these at 5 just so that I have a little bit of extra, because I'm going to use this spacer tubing 3/32, number 223. It's probably one of the smallest tubes. I'm just going to slide it right over top like this. I'm going to take my nippers and go like that. And all I do is I just chase them all up. Push down, level. Some you might have to tweak a tiny bit, but this will get them all down to 3.5 feet, right? Okay. That's how you get your posts even, no matter what kind of fencing you do. You can be doing chain link fence or whatever. It's the same method I use to get all the poles at the right height. You have to make a few concessions when you go into angles, but that's easy to solve. So that's what I'm going to do, is just nip all those off and then mount the railings on top and then be done with it, okay? Okay, so I just want to close out this part with the railings. I want to show you how easy they are to make, okay? These are like, they're very delicate, but they're super strong. Like, it's incredible when you weld plastic, when you melt plastic, right? When you learn to do it, just with practice, right? That's the way it is. Like, you know, forget about just looking at it once and then saying, okay, that's how it's done, I can do it. No, you have to practice and try it first, right? You got to get into the groove. Everybody has to do that. Right? Nobody just, you know, looks at a video and then says, oh, okay, I can do that. And then they just do it. Like, you're motivated by the video and then you try it and then you start to learn. And as you go, you feel the increase happen. So here you can see this railing, like, see how tough this is? Like, this is like very delicate and scale and incredibly strong, right? Like, probably equivalent, not quite to brass, but brass solder joints will break too, right? So anyway, so when you do something like this, the posts are already done, they're already laid up. You just take a piece like this that's a little bit longer and you put a bend in it, and then you can see like this, where you just put it onto the corner like that, just put a bead of glue like that. Like, don't worry if it's angled off like that. Like, who cares, right? Because you're gonna just pull it over the post. You're going to put a bead of glue there. When that's dry, in about 10-15 seconds with solvent, then you're going to put the next one on there, and then you're going to come in when it's dry and you're going to clip the railing, and your first railing is done. And once you get the first railing started, it's just, you just start to roll with it. You can see the second one, like I made two exactly the same. That's it. There's just the posts as I showed you and those railings, and this is good. Like, it's good to go, right? It's just really, like, they look hard, but they're not. They're actually one of the easiest things to model, actually. So the same thing with this here, right? Like, here's a nice soup, like, it really makes the model sturdy. Like, when you get the railings on, it's incredibly light. Like, there's no kinetic energy, right? Do you know what I mean? Like there's no weight to break that with. Like it's structurally sound, but no kinetic energy to break. That's why they're strong as a scale model, right? These railings just tighten the whole structure up. And I did it the same way, right? Okay. You start a piece right there. You just, like, okay, so see the bend right here? Make a piece that's a fair bit longer, and then make, just make one bend in the middle like that, where you think it's going to lay on that railing. And then glue that corner. Just glue the corner. Okay? And then when it's dry, just chase this railing down. Bang, bang, and then nip it off, and you're done. And before you know it, you have the railings on. And these are just standard railings. They're welded to the outside of the post. You're not fabricating a railing in a shop for a high-end client. This is just commercial budget railings, right? So what I want to do is I want to take this up to the top of the layout, and I want to show you what it looks like. Like I want to just point out why I decided this at the last minute. Okay, and I'll show you why, and the difference that just a simple little staircase that you can scratch build like this can really transform a scene. Okay, so here's the building in place. I had to remove the cinder block building out of the way to get my hand and some light in here. So that was the sort of default concept, right? Where these, two building flats butting up against the wall like that. It sort of, see how it sort of tightens the wall up nice and it merges into the building, okay? You'll see this kind of thing all over if you get out and go down back alleys and right-of-ways where railway tracks run. You'll see stuff that you never, well, it'll blow you away. Like if you're attentive to building code and things like that, you'll see all the broken rules and regulations. But so when I looked at that, I thought, it's not enough, right? I'm putting the building together because this little section was sort of added on later because I didn't want just this flat to just go into the wall. I wanted something to kind of come out more at an angle. And so I took this idea from a building that was prototypically further down another building or two, crushed it down in size, took the corner of it, and then just built it into this Slum Landlord building flat, which I think looks cool. It adds more character and with different returns, right? Like look at the wall. See the returns on it? And there's not a straight line in this whole picture, really, is there? And neither is there in the staircase. Now here's what that looks like, the staircase. And I just added the bottom structure so the glue is still wet. Everything, glue's wet, paint's wet, when you're shooting it. So that's going to go like that, see? And I really like that. Because when you look at it, when you look at it, it's just another way to pull the eye. Oh, look at that staircase. Where does that go and why is it go? And you go up there and then you realize, oh, there's a back door back there. There's another little story or a scene back in there too, right? It enriches the scene, you know what I mean? Okay, so I'll give you a couple of snapshots just in closing on this, just to show you the different angles, but you get the idea, and it's really shaping up. And that's the fun of scratch building. You don't have to call it done at a certain time. You can call it done whenever you want. And if you sleep on things, just work on something else, come back and go, what's missing here? Or can I add something here, right? Okay, like for example, this brickwork, just in closing, I added because I thought it added a little extra sort of dimension of interest of decay, because these buildings were really strange over their history. They plastered over the brick when it was out of style or not in vogue. It's sort of weird, but anyway, you see the passage of time that way. And then how I added this awning with the three supporting rods holding it up, and then a drain pipe. And that's the fun of scratch building. You can look at other buildings and then revise other ideas into the model that you're building, because it's up to you. You're the builder. You're the one that's expressing yourself in the character of your own building that you're scratching that no one else has. Okay.